Now, for most people that swing over the top, the root cause lies in their movement sequence. So they'll be turning the body, turning their lower half, their rib cage and their arms in the wrong order. So let's understand how that sequencing should work. In any kind of throwing sport or kind of striking a ball with a bat sport, there is the same powerful movement sequence. And that sequence would be that sense of, once we've taken the ball to the top of our backswing, would we call it, we would then be moving from the ground up. So we'd be moving forwards with our knees and rotating at the same time. So it's this strong motion of the legs. The upper half, the rib cage, doesn't start rotating until later. So the legs do all the work initially, and then later the rib cage would work, and then finally, of course, the arm is launched forwards with this kind of loose of the wrist and the arm. Now, even in throwing, if we get that motion out of sync and we get the order wrong, it starts to look, well, a bit like an over-the-top motion in golf. So, you might want to come around this way, actually, Louise. Let's see this from down the line. Okay, so throwing well has me move the lower half first, and then I can launch it this way. If I move my rib cage first, or worse still, my arm first, then it starts to look like this. And you can see the ball gets thrown kind of downwards and often to the left. Now, that is very similar to the motion in the golf swing when players swing over the top. Typically, there's not enough going on with the legs, and they're too eager with either their shoulders or their arms to kind of start pulling on the club and dragging it down into impact. So if that sounds like you, and if you do struggle with the club kind of swinging over this way, then you need to explore the idea that from the top of the swing, we need to have much more patience, there needs to be more time to allow the legs to work and start to really rotate, and try and feel your arms doing absolutely nothing. And in fact, the motion of the legs should start to pull the shaft in a backwards direction. That won't happen if you're gripping it really tightly and trying to kind of keep it the other way. So let's get the legs working early, get them working faster, and try and leave the hands and arms alone and see what that does to the line of the shaft in the downswing. Now, for many people, swinging the club over the top in transition starts as a problem with their general concept of the swing. And what I mean by that is they see the swing or the motion of the club too much as a straight line. So I put a straight line in there with my pink cones, and they're parallel with my ball to target line. And while that's important for aiming and general orientation, it doesn't describe the motion of the club at all very well. So let's think about this in relation to other games where we play from side on, and in particular baseball. So baseball will be played up here, and of course the bat swings from behind them, and then as they rotate, the motion into the ball is going to be one where the body's rotating this way, but the club is still behind, and then it swings round to straighten up. I mean, they may well, depending on where they hit it on that arc, hit it this way or that way. The point being, it would be impossible to have the bat stay in a straight line in relation to the ball. And I suspect a lot of the problems with swinging over the top come from that misconception of trying to get the club swinging onto the straight line too early in the downswing. So if I try and get on that straight line, I'm going to end up with some of this kind of movement. And of course, as we know, the club comes down steeply. Ultimately, you may try and keep the club moving straight, but then you're going to really twist the face, or typically it swings across. Well, this would be a better way to think about the swing, if you don't already. It's this kind of arcing motion, and it's about where we meet the ball in relation to that arc that is going to deliver the swing path, so the direction of the club through the ball. Okay, so taking that baseball analogy, we know then that as I turn my body, the club stays behind me. Doesn't mean I'm going to hit it over that way, because as I keep rotating, it then squares up. Okay, let's have a quick go at that. So if you struggle with swinging the club over the top, just reflect on how do you actually think about the swing and the motion of the club through the ball, and are you comfortable with the idea that we're swinging on this arc and the club swinging from way behind is actually going to swing round and square up. Let's look at swinging over the top as a club face related problem. We've looked at the idea as a general concept issue with seeing the swing as a straight line and not being comfortable with it swinging behind us. It's almost definitely a movement sequence issue for many, but also the way the club face is in the downswing can often cause this kind of need to square it by throwing the club over the top of the plane. So I've got my hockey stick, and what we're saying is, if the club in the downswing, or even in the upswing, gets too open, so my left wrist is cupped, maybe I've got a weak grip as well, and the club face points skyward in the downswing, well, that clearly isn't going to deliver a strong and powerful blow. So the brain works this out and does what it can, and it self-organizes to try and get that club down and square. So the player takes this journey from hitting these massive kind of slices out to the right. We don't want to do that, so it works out a way not to slice it, and of course that means in squaring the club in that manner, it kind of swings down steeply over the top. And that, you know, and that does the job to a degree. It will stop those big slices straight away, but you'll end up with a whole host of other problems, which will also become slices and steep shots, etc. So, you know, for that player who isn't able to kind of square the club correctly, there's no amount of other interventions that are going to make any difference. We need to deal with what's happening with the club face. So what we're trying to do there, I would certainly look at your grip. I mean, if you're a player with a weak grip and you swing over the top, that is a really bad combination. I would get your lead hand much more over the handle. You'll feel then the club is really kind of pulling left, and you will start by hitting the ball left, but that's part of the journey. So I'd start with a grip. I would then work hard on getting the club face pointing downwards much earlier in the downswing. So we use this reference of the club being parallel with the line of our back by the time the shaft gets to horizontal. That's important. Okay, and from there we would then just be able to keep turning. Now, for someone who swings over the top, all of that is going to hit it to the left. But as I say, that's an important part of the journey, and you will from there start to be able to bring the ball back online. Let's use a progressive exercise. So I've got a pitching wedge here. I'm going to take that stronger grip, and I'm just going to hit a few gentle shots, maybe just 50 yards, with that sense of keeping the club pointing down at the ground. Now that's actually got a little bit of draw spin on it. Let's grab another one. Now once you're comfortable with that idea, and it's going reasonably straight, you can start to swing it that little bit further. And while you're going through this process, you need to start to get comfortable with the idea that a club face that feels a lot stronger allows you to swing from the inside, because you no longer have to make this kind of effort to square the club. And my intentions would be that if you spend enough time hitting these shorter shots, you'll then be familiar with the general concept through the ball and no longer, as I say, have to throw the club over the top. If you've enjoyed this video, then please click subscribe, and I'll keep you up to date with more coaching information. And if you really want to take your game to the next level, then please visit my website, golfcoach.online, where you'll see there my subscription channel, which is Golf Coach Access, which is all about building a golf coaching and education community and having really structured long-term programs. And the best thing is you can get immediate free access.